Trouble finding places to park while you're on the road? On this episode of Driven Too Far, we got 4 tips for you to make life safer and easier. Hello, I'm Andrew Winkler with Chief Carriers, and this is Driven Too Far, the truth about trucking, a podcast that helps over-the-road truck drivers balance career and family. You know, truck parking continues to be a hot topic in our industry, and what are we going to do about it? The quick answer is I know they're working on it at the government level. People are trying to do some things, but nothing's going to happen very fast when it comes to improving the truck parking situation. When you think about the driver's dilemma themselves, it's really twofold, right? It's the driver wants to run out his hours. If it's 10 or 11 hours he's got to run for the day, he wants to use all the hours he can because he's maximizing his money. He's maximizing his available hours to drive. But the kicker is, if I do that as a driver and the further I drive into the day or into the night to use up a full 10 or 11 hours, then I probably have a reduced chance of being able to find a good parking spot. And so I don't want to do that. And on the flip side of that, what drivers tend to do, or what they're starting to do, is they hold up or they pull up short for the day, meaning they get so anxious and panicky about being able to find a good, safe spot to park the truck, somewhere where there's some amenities available to them, where they're not going to get any kind of legal trouble for parking where they shouldn't, that they tend to stop earlier in the day. And sometimes that's 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The problem is with that, while they get a good, safe spot, they haven't maximized their productivity for their day or their ability to earn money. So, man, when I think about that, I feel you, for the drivers and stuff, it's quite a dilemma. So we're going to take you through maybe a couple ideas today, a few tips when you think about it, and hopefully you're doing some of these things already. But we're going to introduce those things. And the first thing is trip planning. Right? You should be doing that anyway. At the beginning of every trip, it means you get your dispatch from operations, and you sit down and you look at your origin and your destination. If it's a long trip, maybe it's a 2 or 3 day trip, you start to plan out, okay, how far can I drive today? Where do I need fuel stops? Where should I aim to park tonight? How far down the road can I get and should I get? I think the key to making this work is make sure you leave yourself some options. If you typically like to park at a truck stop or rest area or something like that, when you're doing the trip planning, maybe you need to give yourself multiple options at the end of the day. So if truck stop's my first choice and I make it 10 hours down the road around this town or this exit on the interstate, what happens if I get there and there isn't a parking spot available? What's plan B? So make sure you have a few options to give yourself. The second tip, and I'm sure you're using some of these, is using the truck parking apps that are available out there. I was just telling somebody back in my day, I'm dating myself again here, but back in the mid-90s, there was 2 books we carried in the truck with us. And no, it wasn't logbooks. It was an atlas that was laminated, a road atlas, and a truck stop book. It was actually a book published by this company that it listed every truck stop by state, the interstate, the exit number, what kind of amenities, food, maintenance, showers, CAT scales, that type of thing. And it was all in a book. But of course, today things have changed and you have those things at your fingertips on your phone. And for the most part, they're free to download, right? So you can use them. A couple of the more popular ones that come across is Trucker Path and Trucker Tools. I'm guessing a lot of you guys are already using those, so make sure you download those apps. But I did come across a couple other interesting ones when I was researching it. One of them was called parkmyrig.com. And while it looked a little crude at first, the app itself, meaning, it wasn't as smooth and modern as maybe you're used to seeing with some of the other ones, I just liked the way it functioned. It was really good about the way you could sort it by interstate, by state. And then you could keep using the filter feature on that to drill down. If I need to stop at a certain truck stop that has certain amenities and is open 24 hours a day, that type of stuff, it would let you filter it, and then it would pop those things up on a map. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then back in December, we were in Washington, D.C. at a conference, and we ran into a guy that has started something new. And it's called the Truck Parking Club. And I'd never heard of it. Maybe you have. I think it's been out there for a little while. But what the concept of the truck parking club is, it's kind of like an Airbnb or a VRBO for truck parking spots. So what they've done is they understand what the industry's facing. The truck stops are full. They don't have any more spots available. The rest areas fill up so dang fast. Certain maybe retailers around have kicked trucks out. You're not allowed to park. Of course, we don't want you parking on the on and off ramps if we can help it. But what they've done is they've gone out and looked for people that have interstate access to land. And maybe they own a chunk of land off a certain exit on the interstate, and they've approached them and say, hey, would you be interested in renting truck spaces by the night for drivers to park? And so there's a lot of them out there doing that, and it's starting to grow. So I just thought it was a really interesting concept that somebody's thinking about that, is using non-traditional space for truck parking to help solve our problems. The other thing I like that one for was I always think about drivers that don't live near our home terminals, right? They always want to know, hey, can I take my truck home? And if so, where do you want me to park it? Where can I park it? Those types of things. Well, of course, we'd like you to park it near at your house if that's an option. Not always an option, understand. But this parking spot thing might be an option for that. So if you were to get on that app and maybe search for available lots around your hometown, you might be able to find somewhere where you can park a truck, 4, 5, 6 days out of the month when you go home at a minimal charge. And it's usually safe, and hopefully it's got video surveillance and maybe even fenced in and stuff. So cool option. Check that out. Again, that was called truckparkingclub.com. The third tip on the parking dilemma is the reserve or the paid parking. I've told you this before. It's not something I was a fan of at first because I felt like it was just the fuel stops coming up with another way to generate revenue, where in the past, we've always been able just to park there for free. As long as there were spots available, you could park. But the more I thought about it, I actually started to encourage our drivers to use it. We as a company have started reimbursing our drivers for using it. And here's why. Because if we can get that truck to move a couple more hours down the road instead of stopping at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we've put more money, more revenue on that truck for the day. And the drivers also put more revenue or income in his pocket by driving more hours or running out his clock as he would. So what if you, during your trip planning, got on some of those apps that have reserve parking? A lot of it's the truck stops, obviously. But go ahead and reserve a spot for yourself that's 10 hours down the road. So you've got a spot waiting for you at the end of the day. Think of the stress that takes away from you as a driver. And on top of that, you're going to be familiar with the place you're parking. You're not driving around searching for things. And by the way, that's when a lot of incidents tend to happen too. When you're looking for something, you're in unfamiliar territory, and all of a sudden you take a corner too sharp or something like that, and maybe tear up the trailer, hit something in the road, etc. But I am an advocate for the paid parking. I never thought I'd probably say that, but when you think about that $20 bill that you're going to spend to make sure you have a safe place to park for the night, and you were able to be more productive throughout the day, that's $20 well spent. The fourth tip is actually asking your company or your driver manager for help. Now, I know they're busy. They're taking calls all day long, but if you get through your trip planning process and you're cruising out throughout the day and you find out you don't have a good spot to park, ask your driver manager to help you. Ask them to locate something for you. Maybe they can reserve a spot for you. Maybe they can jump on that truckingparkclub.com and find a reasonable spot for you. But don't be afraid to use your resources within your own company. Will they complain about it? Maybe, I don't know, but that, when you think about it, that is their job, right? Is to help you be successful, to help you have a safe and successful and productive trip. So at the end of the day, if you need to ask for assistance so you can concentrate on driving the truck, ask your DM or your fleet manager for some help in that area. When I was writing this podcast out and looking for coming up with the tips of how to work through the parking dilemma for yourself and make yourself a little more successful, I thought them as separate tips, like 4 different things you could do. But then I kind of went back and looked at it and I go, these are actually steps. These are actually 4 steps that you should probably be doing on every trip. So it's the trip planning, it's using the technology that's available to you and the apps on your phone. It's going ahead and reserving that paid parking place, probably through your phone, your rewards app on the phone for your fuel stops that you use. And then again, asking the driver manager for help too. So I don't think they're just individual tips. I think that's what you should do every trip. Take the time to do it. Now, if you're on dedicated runs or very familiar traffic lanes and stuff, you may already have some of this. But I knew back when I was a driver, I tried to go different places in the country all the time. And while I always kind of had an idea where I was going and places and the surroundings and stuff, I didn't know for sure. So I think you absolutely have to sit down and take that 15 minutes of trip planning at the beginning of every shift or every day, and make sure you know exactly where you're going. And I think you'll see the stress and the anxiety kind of go away if you take the time to do that. If you're ready to work for a carrier that goes out of its way to help its drivers, check us out at chiefcarriers.com.